So, Byron.
In 2009, the legislature brought us a new package of bills mostly related to the Delta and the new co-equal doctrine. What's your take on that? You alluded to it briefly. Is that going to take us to where we ought to be?
I really shouldn't comment on that.
I'd like to see it again someday.
That may be drifting my way. I was primarily talking about cases that are already final that I was involved in.
Nice try, Byron. Art.
Bob alluded earlier to the idea that Article 10, Section 2 was born of the very rigid interpretation of water rights priorities in the Hermey-Rounds case.
Right.
First question is, the idea that we got flexibility out of Article 10, Section 2. Well, isn't flexibility and water rights, or are not flexibility and water rights certainty, always at odds with each other? One person's certainty is another person's flexibility.
Well, to some extent, that's true. But once the public trust came into our lexicon, and it came in after the certainty report, water rights are never entirely certain, and that's just has to become the norm rather than the problem. I mean, I've told this story before. I was on the water board in 1974 when the city of Los Angeles' permits were approved, licenses were approved for the diversions that were later modified to save Moona Lake. And I asked the chief counsel, I really didn't want to vote for it, and I asked the chief counsel if I had to, and his response, Mr. Craig's response was that it was a ministerial act on our part because it was a vested right, and that it wouldn't do any good if I voted against it, so I voted for it. Once the public trust had become developed, as we know, those water rights were not vested to the extent they thought they were when I approved their license. And so that's a given now, and I think you just have to accept that. I think that certainty is in part knowing what people are doing, making people report it and so forth. We have a huge amount of riparian rights that are still uncertain, notwithstanding everything else. And that's one of the problems in the Delta, for example, where nobody knows what anybody's rights are, and nobody wants them to know. I don't want you to know what my rights are. I don't know what the answer is, but no, I don't think they're necessarily inconsistent. But there is a tension between them, obviously.
I have a follow-up in the same vein. We often think of Article 10, Section 2 in terms of trying to overcome the rigid application of water rights priorities.
Right.
But in the context of groundwater adjudications, Article 10, Section 2 is sort of the predicate for the idea of physical solution. And the doctrine of physical solution now is very often used by the advocates for one side or the other as the idea that the court, in the process of adopting a physical solution, can impose a water rights solution because 90% of the people in the room agree to it, and they can impose it, therefore, have the court impose it, therefore, on the 10% that don't agree. I believe that you made mention of that in reference to discussion of the bar scope.
Well, I didn't really discuss that, but well, I'm not sure I understand exactly what you're saying, because physical solution is an important mechanism. It's not something of itself. It's just a mechanism for reconciling conflicting interests in a given situation. I guess I really don't totally understand your question.
Okay, let me try again. The problem that I'm referring to is the idea that physical solution can overcome the Code of Civil Procedure, the rules of appellate practice, that somehow Article 10, Section 2 is closer to God, and therefore overrides even substantive due process.
Well, I guess I really don't understand your question. I don't think, for number one, that a physical solution is anything but just the result of what resolution is made. For example, the present situation where the East Bay Municipal Utility District takes its water from Folsom Dam by coming down through the city of Sacramento, through the American River, down the Sacramento River, and then it's pumped back to the Folsom South Canal. It's a physical solution. It's a physical solution to a problem. It doesn't stand alone as a something. And it's a practical thing that was worked out by the parties and with the help of the court. But it's still, a physical solution is just an exercise of rights in a certain manner that maximizes the benefits. It permits the minimum flows that were determined way back in the 1400 to be implemented, and at the same time, water can be delivered to East Bay and the side benefit of serving Sacramento County on the way. So I don't see the physical solution really in the same way you describe it. So I guess that's what my problem is. I'm not on the same page.
We have time for two more questions. Greg Zlotnick?
Judge Roby, you talked about 3 prongs, and particularly you differentiate between the public interest and the public trust.
Right.
And considering that the public trust resources are held in the public's interest, in essence, if you could articulate your separation of those a little bit, because it seems that the alternative is that somehow the resources themselves have some sort of...
No, I don't. I suggest that there are 3 legal principles that are in our law. I think they all should be blended together. So it's not that they should stay forever separate, but they should be, somebody should figure out how they relate to each other and how, you frequently see somebody mentioning the trust in a case, but you never see the public interest discussed in the same thing. Sometimes the Constitution is involved in the discussion, sometimes it isn't. I think, and the suggestion, of adjusting priorities and adjusting priorities of use between municipal and other, nobody has ever really used those authorities, which I think they clearly have under the Constitution, for example.
I know one case.
There are some, but not enough.
Other questions? Yes, I can see a hand but not a face.
Mr. Strobey?
Oh, David.
Yeah. Since Bob said this was going to be the last question, I want to end it with a tribute to Ann. As you noted, her 2 papers in the Governor's Commission reports were in-stream flows and groundwater.
Correct.
And you talked about a couple of recommendations in the groundwater report that have not been implemented. Are there recommendations in the in-stream flow report that have not been implemented that you think should be?
Well, there were recommendations in there for providing, and it hasn't gone anywhere. There are lots of ways providing zoning, in-stream, guaranteed in-stream flows independent of a water right where you grab it from somebody, kind of thing. I think that the importance of maintaining in-stream flows and except on a case, here and there, whenever you grab a hold of somebody because you have jurisdiction over them for some reason, is the basic principle of that recommendation.
Well,
I spend most of my time doing criminal law in the last 30 years.
You seem to have, kept your chops here, however. I have this feeling that there's a broad smile from someplace up above looking down because of what's just happened here today. In the first place, I am really proud to be a part of the group of people who have put together this foundation in Ann's memory. Judge Roby to deliver this paper on what is, what has been, and what ought to be, and then to respond so openly and so well to these questions. This has been wonderful. I think we could not have gotten off to a better start for the activities of this foundation. And I hope that you will all join me in a round of applause for that.
this particular group. So now we will have a reception, and while we're at the reception, remember that in Anne's memory, you need to think about donating to her foundation. And there's nobody better than me to go after you, so. I'll be using the reception to do that, and Rob and Art and other folks too. So these curtains are magically open. Look.
Ooh, look at that. This woman has power.
And the foundation is also in the catering business. We bring things from home, like our own vases and things, to make a nice reception for you. So please join us. And thanks again for being with us.